My beloved departed without a word, and I ran away with the burden of a child. Yet, unlike most tales, my child perished. It succumbed just a month before my beloved returned in search of me. 1. I find myself bereft of family. An alpha, albeit one with a flawed gland. The boldest leap I have ever taken in this life was to believe in love. I met my benefactor during my university years. After our initial encounter, he gazed at my frayed, mildew-stained white shirt and uttered not a single word. Yet, he graciously continued to meet with me time and time again. At the tender age of 8, I was abandoned in the mountains, and I clawed my way out of the mire step by step. This was the first instance in my life when someone extended a helping hand to me. The carefully chosen daily necessities, the delicate flowers more tender than the palm of my hand, the exquisite dishes and pastries I savored for the very first time. His affection for me was so profound that I found myself unable to resist the allure of his love. At the tender age of 22, I found myself entwined with him. 2 years of our shared existence felt like stolen sweets from the passage of time, a confection I savored in my mouth, reluctant to swallow. Yet, as with all sweets, they are destined to dissolve. When I turned 24, autumn arrived too early, ushered in by an unexpected snowfall. Just the day before, he had held me close, promising to bring me my beloved pomelo the following day, only to vanish without a trace. Like a gust of wind, he slipped away, eluding my grasp. I sought out his family, once warm and amicable, only to be met with fierce expressions and tear-filled eyes. They admonished me, saying, "You must recognize the disparity between you and us. Moreover, you both are alphas. Don't you understand this is inappropriate? We allowed him to be with you for 2 years. You should consider yourself fortunate." Truth be told, I remained utterly bewildered as to what wrong I had committed to turn supportive elders into adversaries. Yet, the deep-seated insecurities and fragile remnants of my self-esteem prevented me from standing tall. The autumn wind howled mercilessly, slicing at my cheeks like 1,000 tiny blades. As I exited their home, I glanced back after some time. The two of them leaned against the doorframe, their hollow gazes fixed on a distant point, their muffled sobs carried away by the wind, perhaps mourning their disobedient son. Finding no answers from his family, I turned to a circle of friends with whom I frequently gathered. Upon my arrival, the last vestiges of their smiles evaporated, their expressions laced with complexity, regarding me as one might a stray dog begging for scraps. Summoning my courage in the hushed confines of a private room, I inquired, "Can you tell me where he has gone?" A derisive snicker arose from the group. One individual curled their lip disdainfully, the crystal-clear liquid in their goblet swaying precariously, spilling droplets carelessly. "Haven't you noticed how lively we are here?" Another added, "What a lack of self-awareness, coming here to search for someone." It was unclear whether they were condemning my intrusion or my incessant entanglement. Their words twisted and turned, eluding my understanding. "I will leave shortly. Could you at least have him return my call?" This plea elicited a burst of sarcastic laughter from the room. "No wonder he chose to leave. How foolish can one be?" Another chimed in, "After playing with an alpha for 2 years, it's only natural he would tire of it and move on." Amidst their laughter, I stood, an uncomfortable anomaly. Yet one person, unable to meet my eyes, simply said, "Gutingi has gone abroad. He was always meant to complete his studies overseas before returning." Who said it was merely about studying? "He has an Omega fiancée abroad. They intend to marry." With a resigned "oh," I contemplated the reality of being discarded once more, departing amidst a chorus of derisive laughter. Those days were tumultuous. I felt as though I were caught in a dream. After graduating from university, I remained stagnant in Pingjing, never venturing elsewhere. Now, this place felt like a mire, and I could no longer endure it. When I arrived in Pingjing with 2 bags, I departed with the same. I left behind everything he had given me, unsure if it was stubborn pride or a reluctance to owe him anything that held me back. After enduring 2 lengthy train rides to Jiangqing, I awoke from this unsettling dream. Without him, finding a fulfilling job proved arduous, and I could not afford the delightful pastries I once relished. Money is a peculiar thing. It can sustain one comfortably, yet it can also lead to painful falls. Eventually, I settled down as winter approached. During that time, I often felt unwell, unable to articulate why. It wasn't until I fainted on my way to work, only to be taken to the hospital by a kind stranger, that I discovered I was pregnant. The alpha womb is both deep and narrow, with most having atrophied. I was the anomaly. Gazing at the minuscule embryonic sac on the report, nestled within me, An inexplicable panic washed over me. The doctor, perceiving my trepidation, asked, "While a small portion of alphas can indeed conceive, it is exceedingly rare. Do you wish to terminate the pregnancy? At 4 months there are risks, but you still have time to reconsider." My mind was a chaotic whirlwind. I simply stated I needed time to think, taking the informational pamphlet and notes with me. That night, I lay in bed, enveloped in loneliness, unable to find sleep. The following day, I returned to the doctor, declaring my intention to carry the baby to term. I had already dared once. I was unafraid to do so again. My profound loneliness compelled me to seek the comfort of family. For an alpha, having a child is fraught with challenges. During pregnancy, one is gripped by anxiety, fearing that any misstep could transform that precious bloodline into decay. Each prenatal checkup felt like a pit stop in a marathon, providing fleeting reassurance. As my belly swelled and my frame grew increasingly slender, I recoiled from the outside world. No alpha would willingly choose to bear a child, even if biologically capable. Perhaps it was the remnants of pride ingrained in our genes. I was not fearful of judgment from others, yet whispers behind me inevitably cast a shadow over my mood. An alpha without a partner, with diminished pheromones, could struggle to maintain equilibrium, particularly during those trying months. The day my child was born coincided with New Year's Eve. He lay beside me in a tiny blanket, a mewling creature, delicate and crinkled. Tears streamed down my face as I gazed through the veil of water at this child I had labored to bring forth. Outside, fireworks reflected in the glass, blooming brilliantly like my tears. I thought to myself, I am no longer alone. After the tumult of hospital visits, that year slipped away in a haze, but unlike the previous year, I now had a child. I named him Li Xinyue, sharing my surname, affectionately calling him Sui Sui. From that moment on, I found renewed purpose in life raising Sui Sui. He was small, consuming formula and diapers, his needs gnawing at my finances. Life grew tight, yet it was filled with flavor. By day I worked, and after hours, I brought him to the local eatery run by Old Zhang, helping out. At night, I would lie beside him, reading from the physics books that had once been treasured but now lay gathering dust. Sui Sui often expressed disdain, his little voice protesting. I laughed heartily, recounting age-old fairy tales. Perhaps due to my frequent readings, his first word was not dad or mom, but princess. When I heard that, disbelief washed over me, prompting me to ask repeatedly. He only grew more fluent, calling me princess. I was perplexed. Surely I ought to be a prince, or at the very least, a knight. How had I become a princess? Yet life was not so easily swayed by a single term. I chose to overlook it, and so, Sui Sui continued to call me that. He delighted in laughter, his smile revealing a toothless grin. When he called me princess, his joy was infectious, especially when others overheard, and he laughed along with them. I found myself exasperated and powerless, yet laughter escaped me despite my frustration. Consequently, the locals came to know me as the single alpha helping out at Old Zhang's, affectionately dubbed princess. There were nights when I would rise to check on that little rascal and feel a jolt of surprise. Sui Sui bore a striking resemblance to him, particularly in his eyes, and his spirited nature mirrored his father's. As I gazed, a pang of ache would seize my heart. Yet, I reassured myself that Sui Sui would never abandon me. Sometimes, however, reality feels no different from a dream. Dreams are often reversed, and the expectations of reality can root themselves in unexpected ways. Sui Sui began kindergarten at 3, frequently suffering from allergies and illness. One day, the teacher suddenly called to inform me that my child had been admitted to the hospital. I hurriedly rushed in, only to be met at the door of the ward by the doctor, who delivered the grim news with a tone that felt like a death sentence. He informed me that it was a rare form of leukemia, manifesting acutely. As I listened, a ringing filled my ears, and I gasped for breath, desperately interrupting him before he could continue. My hands trembled uncontrollably as I implored, "Doctor, just tell me how to treat it." The doctor's expression softened with sympathy as he explained the necessity of chemotherapy, which would be divided into several stages. He then inquired, "Where is the child's mother?" I replied, "That would be me. I gave birth to him." His surprise was fleeting, quickly replaced by another question. "And where is the father?" I sensed the implication and simply stated, "He is no longer here." The doctor responded with an apology and an explanation, revealing that the absence of a paternal pheromone in the fetus had heightened the likelihood of this illness. To facilitate treatment, it would have been beneficial to have both parental pheromones. My heart ached severely, yet I was left wondering where I could possibly find the information needed from his other father. Was I to travel abroad, intruding upon his life with that Omega wife, pleading for help to save my ex-boyfriend's child? Besides, I had no knowledge of his whereabouts. The world felt vast and unwelcoming, a realization that had never struck me before. Days turned arduous once more. Chemotherapy was exorbitantly priced, and the meager savings I had accumulated were quickly depleted, proving insufficient. I shamelessly approached old Zhang for a loan, as well as a few familiar neighbors and friends, managing to scrape together just enough for the initial expenses. However, that was secondary. The primary concern was the immense suffering endured by my child. Our hearts were intertwined. He was a piece of me, and I could feel his pain, yet I was powerless to alleviate even an ounce of it. Once, as I watched him receive an injection, the delicate skin of his thin arms marred with bruises, I suddenly found myself on the brink of collapse, darkness encroaching upon my vision. The medical staff were startled, quickly supporting me and handing me a cup of glucose. Originally holding back tears, seeing me in such a state, he broke down sobbing. He no longer called me princess but instead cried out for mommy, and then daddy, alternating between the two titles. My throat felt tight and bitter as I stumbled to embrace him. It's all right. I'm here. Don't be afraid. After the first 2 rounds of treatment, I took him northward, returning to Pingjing. Autumn had arrived once more, and I held him tightly, as if he were a precious treasure, clutching him even closer. Arriving once again at the familiar doorstep, I found myself unable to meet with Gu's parents. Upon seeing me through the visual doorbell, their initially gentle demeanor shifted abruptly, and they demanded, "What are you doing here again?" I lifted my son, positioning him in front of the camera, my voice hoarse as I pleaded, "This is his child. I beseech you to save him." Moments later, the housekeeper opened the door, her tone icy as she retorted, "Sir, how dare you bring a child here? We will not be taken for fools. Please, I implore you. Sir, help me plead. Let the uncle and aunt come down. I can arrange for a paternity test for Sui Sui. Sui Sui is their biological grandson." I knelt before her, my knees hitting the ground with a thud. The housekeeper shuddered slightly, but still, she scoffed, uttering a dismissive leave, before turning back inside. The copper-painted door closed before me, severing any hope for assistance. The wind rustled around me, a chilling sound that made my eyes sting with tears. Pingjing was still populated with familiar faces, yet the rapid changes over the past 3 years rendered it almost unrecognizable. I wandered the city with Sui Sui, searching for acquaintances, mostly university friends, and even encountering some from the past gathering. They remained silent for a long while, their faces adorned with mocking smiles that felt all too familiar, and I could only endure the embarrassment as I asked them for money. "Why are you back after all these years?" I returned to ask for funds. "Surely Gu Tingyi left you a considerable sum? What, have you squandered it all so quickly, unwilling to part with the luxuries?" I forced a laugh. "The child is ill. There's no choice. If the gold beneath my knees could be liquidated, I would remain kneeling indefinitely. All I desired was to save my child's life." After much pleading, it was the very individual who had informed me of Gu Tingyi's departure abroad who, unable to bear the sight of me struggling with my child, handed me a card. "Here is 500,000. Take care of yourself. You need not repay it. Consider it my act of charity." I accepted the card, too intimidated to refuse, and without lingering another moment, returned to Jiangcheng. Jiangcheng possessed the medical resources necessary for such a rare illness, and time was of the essence for Sui Sui. He was only 3 years old, but then again he was already 3. Lacking the pheromone from his other father, his condition deteriorated rapidly. Chemotherapy, targeted therapy, and even preparing for surgical expenses became paramount. Yet despite the hospital's assurances of significant reimbursement, the funds remained insufficient. I resigned from my previous job and took work at a construction site, using my once beloved hands, accustomed to solving physics problems, to twist rebar. I took on night driving jobs, returning only for meager meals to visit Sui Sui at the hospital. He had lost more weight, his complexion so pale it made my heart uneasy. His throat often inflamed. He spoke little, and when in pain, his cries were silent. Yet he was so considerate, never mentioning his own suffering, always worried about me, saying, "Princess, why aren't you eating? You're not being good." I scarcely remember how those days passed, lost in a haze for months. As the new year approached, the doctor issued 2 critical illness notifications. He was moved to an isolation ward, and when he emerged, he was barely conscious, occasionally opening his eyes to glance at me, managing a faint smile. On the day he departed, he sat up in the middle of the night, startling me. I asked, "What is wrong? Do you need to use the bathroom?" He remained silent, gazing intently at me. I was momentarily transported back to that night before my separation from Gu Tingyi, when he had looked at me with the same earnestness. After a long pause, Sui Sui smiled widely, saying, "Princess, Little Red Riding Hood is coming to take me away. I'm going to be the new Little Red Riding Hood. I'm going to sleep now." I looked at his bald little head and said, "All right, sleep well." He closed his eyes before me. Perhaps he knew I would struggle to sleep that night, for he drifted off peacefully. I sat by his bedside, unable to take my eyes off his face. His small hand was cold, and I couldn't warm it, even afraid to hold it as it was covered in swellings. At dawn, the monitor by his bed emitted a series of beeps before flatlining. In truth, it would have been better if Sui Sui had departed once he finished speaking, rather than enduring that night of pain. I calmly arranged for the death certificate and other formalities before taking him for cremation. The staff, noting he was a child, gently reminded me that I could keep his identification card, and this time I understood. On New Year's Eve, he was laid to rest. That year was bitterly cold. I spent the entire day traversing Jiangqing, visiting all the familiar faces while wrapping up my work at the construction site and returning borrowed funds. When I finally reached old Zhang's home, it was a month later. He asked, "Siren, would you like a bowl of noodles?" I looked at his red-rimmed eyes and slowly shook my head, my voice a harsh whisper. "No, I think I'm a bit tired. I should head home." Old Zhang forced a smile, opening his mouth as if to say something, but ultimately fell silent. We exchanged no words, bidding farewell in the lobby. As I turned to leave, he suddenly grasped my arm, saying, "Siren, remember to eat and get plenty of rest." In the months that had passed, I had completely abandoned my normal eating habits, and now, reminded by him, I realized I hadn't eaten in nearly 2 days. I nodded, uttering a goodbye before stepping out of the shop. The sky outside was dim, the wind biting and harsh, wrapping around me like a vice. I tightened my coat and entered the long alley. I had walked this alley many times with Sui Sui, where there had always been no one at the far end. But this time, a familiar car was parked there, and a figure stood beside it. He stood tall, his tousled hair scattered by the wind, and his piercing gaze fixed intently upon me. I lifted my chin, unabashedly meeting his stare, my stiff neck trembling with a few muted cracks. Gu Tingyi reacted first. He shed his coat and swiftly approached me in quick strides. Enveloped tightly in the coat, I initially felt warmth, followed by the intoxicating scent of his pheromones. The aroma of long-lost companionship was akin to a raging fire. Yet, the glands at the nape of my neck had long since withered, rendering this flame incapable of igniting or warming me. He embraced me tightly, murmuring, "I have returned." I forced a smile, responding awkwardly, "Congratulations, Siran. I have come to take you home." Gu Tingyi's embrace was undeniably warm. I once cherished his hugs, but after years apart, I felt as though I had awoken from a dream, silently pushing him away and turning to walk home alone. Gu Tingyi stood momentarily in shock. Then, as if nothing had transpired, he forced a pale smile. "Siran, I can't walk fast anymore. Will you wait for me?" My gaze remained cold, my palms clenched and released, resembling a mere shell of a person. Years of caring for a child had drained my pheromones and harmed my glands. It was only after wandering for a long while, lost in thought, that I realized Gu Tingyi's pheromones were overwhelmingly potent. They suffocated me. When I collapsed to the ground, all I could see was Gu Tingyi's weathered face and his anxious expression. Then came the dimming sky, as if it were saturated with ink. I was utterly exhausted. My slumber was devoid of dreams, and upon waking, I felt a twinge of regret. Why did my dreams not include my child? As clarity returned, I noticed it was already night, and I was neither at home nor in a hospital. After changing my clothes, I opened the door and found the staircase, hurrying outside to seek someone, only to suddenly stumble into a crowded living room. Gu Tingyi's parents, former friends, and Gu Tingyi himself were all there. Upon seeing me, each face displayed shock, followed by guilt, concern, and sorrow. But how could these emotions manifest on their faces? I weakly forced a smile, while Gu's mother opened her mouth, ultimately calling out to me hoarsely, "Child, you're awake." Only then did the others react, offering hot tea and blankets. "Why are you dressed so lightly in this cold weather?" "Come, warm yourself. Their kanji warming in the kitchen. Bring him more clothes, we mustn't let him catch a chill. Their clamor was filled with concern. Gu Tingyi stepped forward, reaching out to help me down the stairs. I abruptly swatted his hand away, as if witnessing something unimaginable. The sound of my slap echoed in the now silent room. Gu Tingyi managed a strained smile, asking, "Are you angry because I returned late?" I swear it won't happen again. I averted my gaze, incredulously looking at the others. What is wrong with you? This isn't right, it shouldn't be like this. My body trembled. My pupils dilated, as if gripped by sheer terror. They spoke, "Child, please calm down." I abruptly interrupted, "Enough. Shouldn't you be saying that I am ungrateful? That I should stop entangling myself with your son? I am an alpha. A flawed alpha." I pointed at Gu Tingyi's friends, who had lost their frivolous demeanor, now serious and somber. You should berate me as a greedy mongrel, a shameless wretch returning only to seek wealth. Tears, as large as beans, splashed onto the floor. And then you should have driven me out of here. Why is it like this now? I slowly turned to Gu Tingyi, frantically clutching his collar. It's you. Isn't it? You are the reason they have changed. Ever since your return. Gu Tingyi stared at me, bewildered by my frantic expression. His eyes reddening, jaw clenched. Some friends approached, sensing the tension, urging, "Ran, please calm down. We are at fault, but Tingyi is injured. You mustn't hold on so tightly." I gasped for breath, refusing to let go. Gu's mother, in tears, attempted to embrace me, but I evaded her, her cries echoing. Tingyi left because he had a mission. Child, we cannot let you wade through murky waters. Do you understand? He is hurt. Please let go. Yet I paid no heed, screaming hysterically, Why is everything different now that you're back? You should have cast me and my child out." Gu Tingyi caught 2 words from my murmurs, suppressing his pain, asking, "What child?" I suddenly released my grip, cradling my head. My child, my child." Seeing my inability to respond, Gu Tingyi turned to his friends, demanding, "What child did she just mention? Answer me." The group exchanged glances, trembling as they revealed, Ran had a child. "It's yours." Gu Tingyi staggered back a few steps, then rushed to support me. The cries in the living room rose and fell, yet I let out a derisive laugh. "Ha! You should call my child a bastard. You should accuse me of resorting to any means for money. Gu Tingyi, that is my child." He bent over, both laughing and crying. "The child I bore after 10 months is mine. Return my child to me. You have killed him. Whoever returns my child to me, I will beg, I will do anything." Gu Tingyi, still grappling with the realization that he had a child, seemed utterly dazed. "What do you mean, Ran? What do you mean?" He clutched me tightly, like a bewildered child. I raged, striking and kicking him, lost to madness, shouting, "Return my child." Gu Tingyi remained steadfast, slowly coming to the realization that he had lost something immeasurably precious. The Gu household was in chaos for the entire night. A family doctor hurriedly arrived to administer a sedative, and I drifted back into a hazy sleep. After a thorough examination, I learned my body was riddled with issues. The scar from a difficult delivery still marred my abdomen. My body emaciated, resembling a withered bamboo stalk. My once celebrated hands, renowned in academic circles, were now calloused and cracked. In the past, they refrained from drawing attention to themselves, fearing trouble. After all, these individuals were once a team capable of self-defense. Gu's parents, being his direct kin, naturally received protection. I, however, was different. When Gu Tingyi was summoned away, he left in haste, not even managing to inform me of our engagement, merely passing on a message to his parents to ensure others kept their distance from me. He thought, let the hatred fester. At least that way I might remember him. No one anticipated my silent departure from Pingjing to Jiangqing, where I gave birth to a child. How difficult it is for an alpha to raise a child. It is beyond imagination. They dared not investigate or inquire about my life, merely waiting for Gu Tingyi to return from his undercover mission. Days turned into weeks, and eventually, I arrived in Beijing, cradling a child, seeking help. The child bore an uncanny resemblance to Gu Tingyi, unmistakable to all. What had once appeared as erratic behavior was, in truth, a facade to mask my trembling. When my life unfolded before them in a series of papers, they finally realized they had become indifferent executioners, merciless in their judgments. Li Xinyue, such a melodious name. In the past, I excelled in academics and was blessed with eloquence. Naturally, my choice of name was exquisite. Regrettably, it seems this child was destined to endure suffering from the very beginning. After 2 days of arduous labor, he was born nearly asphyxiated, and subsequently plagued by a series of minor ailments, ultimately failing to overcome that critical juncture. For me, there exists no greater agony in this world. Gu Tingyi fainted once. After all, he was injured and could not withstand any emotional upheaval. The living room was left with a group of people who began to savor the bitter taste of guilt. The family doctor had not departed. Having just changed Gu Tingyi's dressings, he regained consciousness. His complexion was ghostly pale, and his first words were, "Where is the child? Where is Siren?" No one could provide an answer to his query. Gu's father appeared to age a decade in that moment. He patted Gu Tingyi's shoulder and said, "You still have him. You must rise and stand firm." At this gentle gesture, tears streamed from the corners of Gu Tingyi's eyes. The next day, everyone in the Gu family came to a singular realization. Li Siren had gone mad. He seemed to have been unhinged for quite some time, merely having conserved his energy. Upon waking that day, he cradled the doll he had brought back from Jiangcheng for Gu Tingyi, declaring it to be his child, named Li Xinhua, affectionately called Sui Sui. He spoke to others, proclaiming that this child was born into the embrace of 2 loving fathers, with adoring grandparents and a vibrant circle of uncles. Although the journey to Sui Sui's birth had been fraught with hardship, every moment was deemed worthwhile. The others dared not shatter his illusion, instead choosing to play along, enacting a life in which Gu Tingyi had not departed without a word. Sui Sui, from his very first moments, had a penchant for laughter. Li Siren held the doll, gleefully waving a toy he had fashioned from a twig found by the roadside. Sui Sui seemed enchanted by it, reaching out to grasp it, while Li Siren playfully withheld it. "Tingyi, where is my physics book?" he inquired, not turning around, oblivious to the despair lurking behind him. However, Gu Tingyi masked his bitterness, chuckling softly as he embraced them both. "What do you need a physics book for?" Li Siren replied, "Haven't I always read to him to lull him to sleep? It works wonders. Can't you find it?" Gu Tingyi responded, "Well, that particular one has gone missing, but I have another. Would you like me to fetch it?" He declined, requesting instead a volume of Grimm's fairy tales. As Sui Sui grew slightly older, he became more vivacious. Perhaps it was the abundance of good-hearted souls surrounding him that nurtured his cheerful demeanor, often indulging in playful antics. Yet, Li Siren did not spoil him, frequently admonishing Sui Sui at the dinner table. "Don't be picky. You must eat winter melon, potatoes, and apples." In his imagination, Sui Sui seemed to stubbornly retort but ultimately complied. Li Siren beamed with satisfaction, turning to Gu Tingyi to say, "See, I told you tough love was necessary." Gu Tingyi wore a serene smile, then turned to inquire of the family doctor what significance these fruits and vegetables held. The family doctor paused, then replied, "This is a recommended diet for leukemia patients." At that time, everyone was present. In the corner of the living room lay a heap of gifts sent as tokens of apology, many intended for Sui Sui. Li Siren had never seen such things. He was lost in his own world. A few friends had recommended numerous doctor's contacts, having already offered their apologies multiple times. Li Siren was oblivious, unable to comprehend why these individuals sought forgiveness, always assuring them of his future absolution, yet unaware of when that future might arrive. Yet, all were secretly wishing that tomorrow would never dawn. It was during this time that the nickname Princess began to circulate. After all, Sui Sui had once taken great delight in calling him that, prompting everyone to throw him a birthday party and address him as such. He laughed in the flickering light, scolding Sui Sui, "You little rascal. How could you let that slip?" Gu Tingyi enveloped his hand within his own, drawing him close and soothingly saying, all right, princess, it's time to blow out the candles." Li Siren, bewildered, glanced around and then at the cake. "Is today my birthday?" Gu's mother smiled, wiping away a tear from the corner of her eye, replying, "Indeed, summer is nearly over. It is certainly your birthday." He let out a long "oh," inexplicably asking, "But why isn't old Zhang here?" Everyone hesitated for a moment. Someone recalled that old Zhang was a friend of Li Siren's from Jiangcheng, stating, "Old Zhang is busy frying rice, but he sent a gift for you." Li Siren, confident, remarked, "It must be Sui Sui who helped bring it back. That little imp loves to surprise me. You mustn't call me princess anymore. If you don't want to call me daddy, you can call mommy instead." Upon hearing this, Gu Tingyi's pheromones seemed to waver, and he turned away, biting his knuckles. Yet soon, those pheromones were suppressed back within him. The doctor had mentioned that Lee Siren's glands had largely atrophied, making him intolerant to the high concentration of pheromones from those around him, which could jeopardize the little glandular function he had left. Once the candles had been extinguished, Lee Siren dashed away again, clutching the doll in his arms. His joy was fleeting as he began to question, "Why is Sui Sui so light?" He then buried his head in his hands, pleading, "Please, save him. He truly is Gu Tingyi's child." Gu Tingyi approached slowly, gently reassuring him, "I am right here, Siren. Don't be afraid. The child merely has a cold." He lifted Lee Siren from the floor, offering his apologies to the gathered crowd as he slowly made his way upstairs. Lee Siren looked up, leaning against him as he once did, asking, "Really? Will he be all right?" Thus everyone replied, "He will be fine." Lee Siren thought to himself, "Splendid. Sui Sui will surely be healthy and safe in the future." I had thought this dream could stretch on eternally, yet I found myself awakened. A misdialed phone call had roused me. The caller immediately shouted "Mom," asking why I had not yet sent him his living expenses. I stood rooted in place, stammering, "What did you call me?" The caller, unable to hear clearly, repeated, "Mom? Mommy? My dear mother, your child truly has no living expenses." It was as if a streak of white had cut across the sky, followed by a sudden clap of thunder. A chill washed over my face as I raised my hand, only to feel a splash of water. I opened my mouth, yet no sound emerged. When I tried again, my voice was a harsh croak. "You must have dialed the wrong number, child," I hastily added, "but could you please not hang up just yet?" The caller, hearing this, expressed a flurry of apologies. "No need to apologize. Could you call me Mom just a couple more times?" He appeared perplexed, asking, "Call you what?" My emotions surged, and my speech became a tangled mess. "I am 28 years old. My child passed away a few months ago. He was only 3. His voice sounded somewhat like yours. Could you please call me Mom once more? Dad would suffice as well." The caller fell silent, seemingly moving about, as a breeze drifted through the line. Just when I thought I might not hear that call again, he quietly asked, "Are you still there, Mom? I just found a quiet place and wrote down a few things to tell you." I covered my mouth and nodded. He continued to recite, "Mom, I am doing well. You must remember, this is not a farewell. I have simply embarked on a journey to another place to grow up well. You must take care of yourself, eat well, remember to sleep on time, and don't think of me too much, or else I will miss you terribly. We will surely meet again. The world is vast, and we will cross paths once more. I am the flower you encountered, the breeze you felt, the clouds you admired. I love you." I suddenly collapsed to the ground, my anguished cries tearing through the somber night. Everyone was alerted. They witnessed my struggle, saw me like a wild grass on the verge of being uprooted, clinging desperately to the world. At some point, the call had ended, and the caller remained unaware that on this end was an alpha, oblivious to the sacrifices this alpha had made for their child, all for the sake of that one utterance of Mom. Gu Tingyi arrived with friends, while I found myself enveloped in the embrace of Gu's mother. Her hair cascaded around her shoulders as she gently grasped my chin, murmuring, "I am so sorry, Siren. I am truly sorry. Just wait a moment. Tingyi will be here shortly," I replied, my gaze lost on a distant toy, my eyes vacant, tears cascading down like a string of painful seeds. After what felt like an eternity, night fell once more. I sat in the hall. A few individuals bowed deeply before me, expressing their apologies for failing to save my child, labeling me a hero and urging me to find strength. I lowered my gaze and asked, was there truly no other way at that time? All I received was another apology. Deep down, I understood that they had called back Gu Tingyi from his retreat, indicating the gravity of the situation. The card I had to bring my child to the capital had passed through countless hands before it reached me. Perhaps everyone had done their utmost. Yet fate weaves a convoluted and tortuous path. An elder's voice trembled as he confessed, "It is my fault. I arranged this. I hope you can place the blame on me, for I deserve it." Frankly, if it weren't for Gu Tingyi, I would never have even had the chance to encounter him. I could not bring myself to blame him. He did not say not to blame Gu Tingyi, and indeed, I could not hold him accountable. He had saved many lives. My only resentment lay in the bitter truth that one life was exchanged for so many others, and that life was my child's. I despised that, unbeknownst to me, he had turned my child into a hero without consulting me, the biological father. I loathed the feigned sympathy and the bystanders who had turned a blind eye. I also loathed myself for my utter helplessness from start to finish. Once, during my time with Gu Tingyi, I had uttered the words, "Love is a burning flame. Some stoke the fire while others become ensnared." Yet, it is undeniable that once the kindling of anticipation is consumed, all that remains are the ashes of resentment and scars upon the ground. I declined their compensation, rising to my feet, my vision blurring. Several hands reached out in haste. At 28, I only managed to grasp my own resolve and stand firm. I stated, "I am tired. I shall rest now." Gu Tingyi seemed poised to follow, but ultimately, he merely watched me retreat into the enveloping darkness of the room. Someone, lost in thought, murmured, "Siren, it seems we can no longer hold on." A companion slapped him, reprimanding, "What nonsense are you spouting? Slap yourself." The individual quickly registered his mistake, striking his own face in contrition. I spoke out of turn. "I am merely tired. A good rest will suffice." Gu Tingyi bore no grudge, despite the blood seeping from his palm, a searing pain coursing through him. In truth, compared to the suffocating silence, he longed for me to confront him, to curse him, to strike him. At least that would ground him, preventing him from being swept away by the winds. The one who dared to speak had not erred. The thoughts of everyone in the living room echoed this sentiment, though they dared not acknowledge it. A grand illusion. For months, I drifted through a life that did not belong to me. A life belonging to anotherly siren, one I envied yet could not touch. Now, awakened from the dream, I felt a sense of relief. At the very least, in another world, my child could find happiness. Perhaps the heavens truly bore no affection for me. At 8, I resented the heavens for denying me parents. At 18, I lamented their refusal to grant me tuition. At 24, I cursed them for stripping me of dignity. At 27, I bemoaned their neglect of my child's health and peace. Now, I no longer harbored resentment. Hatred requires strength, and it was clear I had lost that part of my vigor, along with the youthful arrogance I once possessed. The Gu family kept a watchful eye on me, refusing to allow my return to Jiangxing, even accompanying me during the memorial for my child. I did not wish for him to be present, yet he lingered beneath a nearby myrtle tree, his brows furrowed in distress. Thus, the years passed, their grip on my being dragging me toward the shores of my 30th year. I never returned to physics. Instead, I penned a few storybooks, illustrating them with my rudimentary artistic skills. Gu Tingyi inquired, "What is this story?" When I felt cheerful, I would share. "It is the tale of the Princess and Little Red Riding Hood." However, I did not share them with anyone else, even clutching them close while I slept. My memory deteriorated, and I aged, my hair streaked with white. Who could tell that I was merely an alpha in my 30s? After my birthday, I burned the storybooks. The next day, I gathered a few frequently worn garments, slung a backpack over my shoulder, and cheerfully stepped outside. I even exchanged rare pleasantries with the steward. He asked, "Sir, where are you headed?" I replied, "I am going shopping to buy some snacks. You needn't accompany me today." Before leaving, I turned back for a lingering gaze, pondering something unknown. I seemed to be emerging from the shadows of the past, revitalized, my eyes sparkling with life. The remaining members of the Gu family rejoiced, calling Gu Tingyi to inform him, "Siren has gone out." He said he would take a stroll. Gu Tingyi remained silent on the other end for a long while before responding with a simple "all right." The call ended with a beep, resonating with the rhythm of my heartbeat. Gu Tingyi awaited my video call. He gazed at my profile, smiling as he asked, "Where have you been?" I curled my lips into a smile, squinting in the sunlight. "Nowhere in particular. I just wanted to enjoy the pleasant weather." Gu Tingyi was dressed in formal attire, his collar concealing the scar on his neck. Such blemishes adorned his body in abundance. Even now, he struggled to walk, moving considerably slower than I. We had finally exchanged roles from the time I once chased him. I asked, "Are there any secrets you still hide from me?" Gu Tingyi replied, "Yes." "What is it?" "I arranged for an engagement ring some time ago, Siren. I wish to offer you a home." I scrutinized his face, once the embodiment of the courage I had poured into love, now marked with wrinkles. Yet he remained gentle, evoking admiration. I chuckled and said, "That won't do. I harbor hatred towards you." Gu Tingyi simply responded, "I know." It was love that could not be fully realized, hatred that could not be clearly articulated. Then I said, "I too have something to conceal from you." "What is it?" "I will tell you when I return." On this particular day, the weather was splendid. Someone suggested we indulge in a hot pot feast to liven the atmosphere, and everyone agreed. They procured the ingredients and set the table, eagerly awaiting my return from shopping to fill the deliberately empty snack basket. We waited and waited, the trees around rustling as leaves fluttered down. Gu Tingyi pulled out his phone, preparing to make a call, but before dusk could settle, the news arrived that Li Siren had plunged into the river. He was truly gone, much like the solitary child who had hurriedly entered the world only to depart in haste. The naivety of youth leaves one wondering whether fate truly desires a life lived or extinguished. Perhaps Li Siren had come to this understanding. The cruelty of fate lay not in demanding death, but in forcing one to endure a painful existence. Love, kinship, and friendship arrived tardily. Yet, he expended his final strength to upend the chessboard of fate. What came too late was not worth having. It was not a matter of seeking revenge with his life, but rather, the weight of longing became too burdensome to bear, leading him to bury it within a small mound of earth. Gu Tingyi seemed to grasp something profound. His phone fell to the ground as he lowered his gaze. The Gu Tingyi of the past would never have known that a single, unavoidable departure would cost him both his beloved and a child he had never met. Li Siren's resentment toward Gu Tingyi stemmed from the prolonged waiting. Thus, he condemned him to an eternal wait for a secret that would remain forever unknown. Meanwhile, the princess and Little Red Riding Hood reunited, venturing into the forest to catch fireflies, no longer burdened by solitude. The end. Thank you for listening. We shall meet again in the next tale.